Today on NewsWatch, Donald Trump is under fire. See why Hillary Clinton is accusing him of inciting racism and how he's responding. Plus, a simmering cauldron of chaos. Our Middle East bureau chief shows us what's fueling the fire and what it means for the world. And we take you to a hot new retirement town, and it's not Florida. See what's drawing retirees to the Deep South. And thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Franklin Graham. With only 70 days until the election, presidential campaign politics have hit a new low. Hillary Clinton has released a new attack ad claiming Donald Trump is a candidate of racists. Gary Lane has this story.
The new ad released by Hillary Clinton attempts to depict Donald Trump as a racist, a candidate supported by white supremacists and the Ku Klux Klan.
The reason a lot of Klan members like Donald Trump is because a lot of what he believes, we believe in.
Clinton said Trump and the Republicans are reinforcing harmful stereotypes, calling it a disturbing preview of the kind of president Trump would be.
He is taking hate groups mainstream and helping a radical fringe take over the Republican Party.
But Trump said the allegations are the oldest ploy in the Democratic playbook.
When Democratic policies fail, they are left with only this one tired argument. You're racist, you're racist, you're racist.
Trump said Clinton was not only attacking him, but millions of decent Americans who support him. In New Hampshire Thursday, the GOP candidate said he doesn't want white supremacists to vote for him. His campaign is about love for America, not hate. And although Mrs. Clinton still leads in national polls, it may become more difficult for her in the days ahead to restore voter trust and deflect attention away from her email scandal. The battle over race took the spotlight temporarily off of the Clintons' ongoing problems over her emails and the controversy over her connections between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department when she was Secretary of State. But the issue will be coming back. A federal judge has ordered the State Department to begin releasing additional emails starting September 13th. They're among the nearly 15,000 messages Clinton did not turn over, but were discovered on her personal server by the FBI. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Franklin Graham is urging Christians in New York to vote on Election Day. During a stop on his 50-state Decision America tour in Albany, Graham encouraged members of all parties to vote for candidates who embody Christian beliefs, but he did not endorse any presidential candidate. He also said Christians should consider increasing their level of civic participation by running for all levels of political office. A Louisiana police captain says the Red Cross stopped him from praying with flood victims at a shelter. Captain Clay Higgins posted a Facebook video telling his story. He says a Red Cross worker in his town of Lafayette told him he could not pray because people might be offended, and he was then told to leave.
Our First Amendment rights include the freedom of religion and the free practice thereof. Moreover, man, bigger than our own First Amendment, what's wrong with offering loving prayer to people that are in a shelter? Why would an agency like the Red Cross deny such a thing?
Clay says he decided to go pray with the victims because, quote, this flood is in biblical proportion and I believe it certainly calls for a biblical response. He says he just wanted to offer love, encouragement, and compassion. A spokesperson for the American Red Cross says the organization's policy prohibits any one religion from being singled out and practiced. But the organization told the Advocate newspaper that if Higgins had approached managers, they would have accommodated him. A U.S. Navy ship fired warning shots at an Iranian vessel that threatened the U.S. ship. This came after the Iranian fast attack craft started approaching the ship.
My understanding is they were. In this instance, they did feel compelled ultimately to fire 3 warning shots. And the reason for that is they had used steps, they had taken steps already to try and de-escalate this situation, appropriate steps, including flares.
A spokesperson for the State Department said it was not clear what the intention of the Iranian ships were, but the behavior was unacceptable. American hostage Kayla Mueller faced unspeakable torture at the hands of ISIS, but fellow hostages say she showed courage and stood up for her faith. ISIS abducted Muller while she was serving with Doctors Without Borders in Syria, eventually torturing her to death. But recently released fellow captive Daniel Otson told ABC News Muller stood up to her captors. He says when ISIS militants announced her fellow captives that she had converted to Islam, she spoke up and said, "No, I did not." Otson went on to say, "I would not have had the guts to say that. All of us were impressed by her strength that she showed in front of us." Asia Bibi will fight for her freedom in court in October. She's a Pakistani Christian woman sentenced to death for blasphemy against Islam. Bibi was convicted in 2010 after Muslim women told a cleric she insulted the prophet. But the trouble actually began when the women objected to Bibi using their drinking glass because she was not a Muslim. Her case is one of many examples of how the blasphemy law is often twisted to target Christians who are a minority in Pakistan. Turning now to health news, an important report for people who want to live longer. Couch potatoes have a higher risk of dying younger than people who are more active. So just what is the best type of exercise to prolong your life? Here's CBN's Lori Johnson with the research.
A study of more than 500,000 adults published in the Journal of the American Medical Association reveals the government's guidelines on exercise don't go far enough. Although people who follow the recommended 2.5 hours a week of moderate exercise, like walking, did have a 31% less chance of dying than those who didn't exercise, people who exercised 7.5 hours a week had a 39% less chance of death than non-exercisers. The research shows sprinkling in some vigorous exercise, like running, adds even more years to your life. People who spent 1/3 of their exercise time in strenuous activity were 9% less likely to die prematurely than people who exercised the same amount of time but only moderately. Those who spent more than 1/3 of their exercise time in strenuous activity had a 13% reduction in mortality. 61-year-old Mark Sisson, the man behind the wildly popular health blog Mark's Daily Apple, says interspersed cardio has other benefits closely tied to longevity.
That little burst of activity can have such dramatic effects on all aspects of your health. And for people who have been trying to lose weight, for instance, and are plateaued or stalled, that sprint workout can be sort of the breakthrough.
He says muscle-building exercises like push-ups, sit-ups, and weightlifting can prevent broken bones.
The tension of the muscle on the bone, it creates bone density, for instance. And we want to have strong bones as we get older.
So when it comes to longevity, exercise makes a difference, ideally about an hour a day. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Up next, the Middle East perfect storm of terror, and it's taking aim at Israel. Our Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us to analyze the threats posed from ISIS and Iran. The Middle East is a chaotic cauldron on the brink of explosion. As our CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell tells us, the mix of war, rivalries, and enemies could add up to a deadly event with global implications.
The rise of ISIS rocked the Middle East. Yet it's just one development changing the landscape of the region. Despite a nuclear agreement with Iran, many believe the region is moving closer to a nuclear weapon. And fueling both ISIS and Iran is their apocalyptic vision of an Islamic Messiah known as the Mahdi. Add to this mix Russia, which burst into this volatile region to save Syrian President Bashar Assad's regime. Vladimir Putin's bold move represents a game changer for the area, with prophetic implications. In the middle of the chaos sits Israel. Many see its capital, Jerusalem, as the epicenter, where the fate and future of the Middle East will finally be determined.
And Chris Mitchell has written a book about the current situation in the Middle East called ISIS, Iran, and Israel. He joins us now, visiting from our bureau in Jerusalem. So what do you mean by apocalyptic Islam?
Well, there's two major groups there in the Middle East. One is ISIS, the other is Iran, and both of them have an end-time eschatology. ISIS believes in a prophecy that there'll be a great end-time battle in a Syrian town called Dabiq, and they believe that at that time the Muslims will defeat Crusader nations. they will eventually be able to take over the world. Iran has an also end-time eschatology, and they believe they're preparing the return of their Islamic Messiah called the Mahdi. And to do that, part of what they're doing is developing this nuclear weapon. Despite the agreement last year by 5 powers and Iran, they're still trying to get a nuclear weapon, and they believe that's part of the preparation for this Islamic Messiah to take over the world and establish Islam as the one world religion.
You write in your book about being on the front lines with the Kurdish military, the Peshmerga, and close to ISIS positions. What did that tell you about the war with radical Islam?
Yeah, we had the experience of going with the Kurdish military called the Peshmerga, and we were in a position about 500 meters from ISIS. I write about it in the book in a chapter called On the Front Lines of the Free World. And when I was there, I had the sense that I literally was on the front lines of the free world, that as I looked at ISIS positions, I could see that there would be darkness and tyranny, and behind me was freedom and light. And I think that, to me, epitomized the kind of battle we face between freedom and tyranny. And right now, it's not just the front lines with the Kurdish military. The front lines in this war could be anywhere. It could be a promenade in Nice, could be a nightclub in Orlando, or a county office in San Bernardino. We live in a new world right now where the front lines are blurred. But the war, the battle, is for freedom and for our civilization.
Now, you mentioned the nuclear deal with Iran earlier. Let's talk about the threat from Iran. Has the nuclear deal done anything to change their goals, and what are their goals specifically?
I don't think so. I know people that approve this agreement feel like it's going to delay Iran's goals for a nuclear weapon, but I think it has legitimized their ability to enrich uranium, and I think they still have this goal 5, 10, 15 years when some of these restrictions are lifted. They still have the goal of having a nuclear weapon. They also have a covert nuclear program that they've had for years, and that has been addressed by this agreement. And as I said, this is part of their idea, this end-time eschatology, that a nuclear weapon will shift the balance of power in the region and around the world.
You've been in Jerusalem now for 17 years and, of course, have seen a lot of changes. How would you say the nations are shifting in religion now?
In a couple of ways, and the nuclear program plays into this, because the United States administration has shifted the balance of power in the Middle East. And what I mean by that is they've tilted it towards Iran. Now, because of that, both Saudi Arabia and nations like Israel see a potential nuclear Iran as a mortal danger. So we see this unprecedented alliance between Sunni nations like Saudi Arabia and Israel that have been traditional enemies for decades, and yet they're aligning themselves because they fear Iran. The other big thing that's changed is the entrance of Russia. Russia has come into the Syrian civil war. They're actually, in the last couple of weeks, have used bombers inside Iran to attack ISIS positions. This has really changed the dynamic of the Middle East. And what I describe the Middle East as a car. And for decades, the U.S. has been driving that car with its hands on the wheel, setting the tone for the whole region. Basically, they have taken their hands off the wheel, and now they have other powers like the Russians and the Iranians trying to grab hold of the wheel. And right now, it's making the Middle East kind of careen off the road.
Now, you also met with a number of Christians who have faced ISIS. What do we need to know about their plight?
We need to know, first of all, that they're suffering and that they face 4 choices. They could leave their homes they had lived in for generations. They could stay, but they would have to pay the jizya tax for non-Muslims, or they could convert to Islam, or they could die by the sword. We need to understand their plight right now is that they don't have anywhere to go. There's many places that won't accept them, and right now they're sort of languishing. And in the book I write about them because I believe there's a real important for the church in the West to understand their plight and to pray for them. And I prayed a prayer in one of the churches I was in, that I would be a conduit. And the book is kind of a testament to that, to help people understand the plight of Christians in the Middle East.
Awful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, you can find out more about this book, and it is called ISIS, Iran, and Israel. You can also keep up with what Chris is covering in the Middle East by watching his online program, Jerusalem Dateline. You can find it at cbnnews.com. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Keep up the great work. God bless you.
You too.
Up next, retirees flocking in droves to a small southern town for more reasons than just one. Hear why they love Mississippi so much, they're calling this place their perfect home. If you think of retiring to the South, you probably think of moving to someplace in Florida, not Oxford, Mississippi. But many people have discovered this hidden jewel. It's been named one of the best 100 small towns in America. And as Charlene Aaron reports, it is attracting a record number of retirees.
Oxford, Mississippi offers a glimpse of Southern charm at its best, as quaint boutiques, restaurants, and art galleries line the town square. Just 90 minutes from Memphis and home to the University of Mississippi, it offers both small-town feel and sophistication. The community boasts a rich literary tradition, with famed writers William Faulkner and John Grisham finding inspiration here.
We are so fortunate that for a small community of 21,000, that we have the #1 bookstore in America. We have authors like John Grisham come and do book signings, Caroline Kennedy. So it's everything you want in a large city, but you're living in a small community.
Oxford, Mississippi is also a popular city for retirement. Within the last 5 years, nearly 400 retirees have made this their home.
Oxford has a rich history. It's vibrant. It's safe. It offers extraordinary social, cultural, and educational opportunities.
The Magnolia State also boasts one of the country's lowest tax burdens, and retirees don't pay any state income tax on money from their 401ks and IRAs. They also enjoy a low cost of living and affordable housing. For example, a home in Oxford is 20% cheaper than in Miami, Florida, a popular haven for retirement.
Someone in the Midwest may be paying $5,000 on property taxes. We're paying $1,100.
Rosie Vasallo relocated here with her husband and now works to attract other retirees. She says a major selling point is the Lifelong Learners Program at Ole Miss.
Individuals 65 years of age and older can take 4 semester credit hours per semester free at no charge. So that alone right there is fabulous.
Eddie and Carol Clinton moved here from Florida. Eddie retired from an amateur sports union and was drawn by the town's athletic atmosphere.
I grew up being a sports fan, being involved with basketball, baseball. I even enjoy going to the girls' soccer games.
Iowa natives Joe and Brenda Talley checked out a number of other cities before deciding on Oxford.
We looked at Santa Fe, New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, San Antonio, Texas,
Las Cruces.
Las Cruces.
A good deal of Florida as well. Too many places to remember them all.
The Talleys also wanted to escape the cold Midwest winters.
The first thing I was looking for was climate change. I love the weather down here.
They also enjoy rich cultural experiences, such as Broadway quality shows, festivals, restaurants, and more. A newcomers club helps retirees connect and make new friends.
We have several book clubs. We had a Faulkner study group, which I enjoyed for its duration. There's an art crawl with many, many local artists. Every Saturday there's art on the square. It's just a very rich cultural, and of course the Ford Center.
For retirees who want to travel, there is one drawback. The nearest airport is more than 70 miles away. But Vasallo says the town's tremendous appeal outweighs that minor inconvenience.
You can get so much more home here than what they can get there, and you're able to save your money from not having to pay so many taxes to do things with your family, with your money here. So it's just a beautiful community, and it's safe. There's just something here for everyone.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News, Oxford, Mississippi.
Well, it's the weekend and you may be looking for some family-friendly entertainment. For some help, we turn now to our friends at Plugged In Online with a review of the new film, Kubo and Two Strings. Take a look.
Your magic is growing stronger, but when we grow stronger, the world grows more dangerous.
In the movie Kubo and the Two Strings, a young boy named Kubo lives in a cave and takes care of his wounded mother. She's really just a shell of herself most of the time, but in brief moments her mind will come back into focus and she'll tell him stories of magic and legends.
Your family is very powerful.
They're tales of his witch-like and dangerous aunts, his uber-powerful grandfather, and his deceased but once brave and valiant samurai father.
This was where my father prepared for his quest.
Kubo is never quite sure if these fantastic histories are truth or fantasy, but they always thrill the boy to the core. That is, until he breaks one of his mother's most important rules and stays outside past dark one night.
We've been looking for you for so long.
It's then that he learns that his wicked aunts are very real. Their appearance sends Kubo running for his life and sets him on a journey of self-discovery.
We're going to find your father's armor. It's the only thing that can protect you.
This stop-motion animated pic is incredibly impressive to see and hear.
If you must blink.
And it tells a swirling fantasy story of parents who will give their all for the son they love.
Do it now.
But all that eye, ear, and heart-pleasing stuff covers up some philosophies that parents may not be expecting. This tale of witches and gods readily accepts an Eastern mindset that embraces ritualism and dark spiritual elements. So I'm giving Kubo and the Two Strings 2.5 strums of a magical lute out of 5 for family friendliness. For the full review, be sure to check out PluggedIn.com. Plugging you into the movies, I'm Cheryl Wilhelmi for Focus on the Family's Plugged In Movie Review.
And that's going to do it now for CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about, and you can find it at cbnnews.com. We'd love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Have a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend. We'll see you Monday.